said that Nadu was the Hogaak of Modern Horizons 3, but I was wrong, because it's even better. Nadu Winged Wisdom is one of those cards that's blatantly broken on its face. As soon as it was revealed, pretty much everyone knew it was busted. The only question was exactly how busted. Well, Ruby Storm took off immediately upon the release of Modern Horizons 3 thanks to a modern meta that was woefully unprepared for the archetype, which makes a lot of sense considering that Storm hadn't really been a real deck in Modern in many years, and this took some of the focus off the bird. As the weeks ticked by and the meta adjusted to Storm, it started to fade and Nadu rose to the top of the format, but everyone knew that the real test would be Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3. If Nadu really was Hogaak, it would put up a historic performance at the event, much like Hogaak did back at Mythic Championship 4 in 2019. If you look back at Mythic Championship 4, probably better known as Pro Tour Hogaak, the numbers are ridiculous. 21% of the day 1 meta played Hogaak, despite the fact that Leyline of the Void, the single best answer to the Hogaak deck, was the most played card at the event. By the time the event ended, 45% of players who got at least 8 wins in Constructed were Hogaak players, more than double its day 1 metagame percentage, and its overall win rate was an impressive 56%. Despite these numbers, thanks to the quirks of Pro Tours being split between Limited and Constructed and some bad luck in win-and-ins, Hogaak only managed to put a single player into the top 8 of the event. Now the numbers are in from Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3, and the stats on Bant Nadu are even more insane than Hogaak at its Pro Tour. The deck was 21% of the day 1 meta, just like Hogaak, but it managed to win an absurd 59% of the time, which is an almost unbelievable win rate for a modern deck with so many players. Normally when an archetype gets close or above 60% win rate, it's a deck that 1 or 2 players play and run really hot with. Having the most played deck in the field be close to 60% is something that just doesn't really happen. It then backed up these numbers by putting 5 players into the top 8 and then eliminating every non-Nadu deck in the quarterfinals, leaving an all Nadu top 4. For some more recent context, in last year's Pro Tour Lord of the Rings, our last Modern Pro Tour, Rakdos Scam was the talk of the tournament thanks to its 54% win rate, while Team Rhinos managed to win an impressive 56% of the time, which is really solid, but still way worse than Nadu's 59% win rate. Both decks were later targeted by bannings, with Fury being banned from Scam and Violent Outburst banned to power down Rhinos. I think there's a pretty strong argument, based on its performance at Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3, that Bant Nadu might be the best modern Pro Tour deck of all time. The only deck I can think of that seriously challenges it is Eldrazi from Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch, and here this is a hard comparison to make. Heading into Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3, everyone knew that Nadu was the deck to beat. They built their decks to beat this deck. At Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch, Eldrazi were a rogue deck that only a couple of teams came up with. If you look at the meta, at Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch, which ended up hearkening in the infamous Eldrazi winter period in 2016, only 8% of players were playing Eldrazi on day 1, but somehow the deck ended up being 48% of players with at least 8 wins in Constructed and took up 6 of the top 8 slots. Whether this is more impressive since the deck put up these absurd numbers with such a small day 1 metagame percentage, or less impressive since most players just missed the power of Eldrazi and it wasn't really hated on at all, leaving it without a target on its back like Nadu had at this past Pro Tour, is super hard to say, but either way, we know how it ended. Modern was destroyed for a few months during Eldrazi winter before Wizards banned Eye of Ugin. When you add all this together and think about the card itself, it's almost impossible to imagine a world where Nadu isn't targeted by a banning. Not only did it just have a historic Pro Tour performance, but it's a miserable design. Even outside of power level, it has tracking issues. We saw that weird card being moved around the table at the Pro Tour. It leads to these non-deterministic egg-style combo turns where you're gonna sit there for 10 minutes as your opponent draws their deck in hopes that they might whiff somehow, and it's surprisingly hard to hate on. Sure, cards like Harsh Mentor or Collector Roof can shut down the Shuko loop, but that doesn't mean the deck won't just get an Outrider and Core win. Plus, because it has cards like Court of Calling, it can easily tutor up an answer to any answer you can present to the deck. So all this to say, the deck is definitely going to be targeted by a banning, but this brings us back to Hogaak. Once it became clear that the Hogaak deck was unfit for Modern, Wizards announced a banning, but rather than banning Hogaak itself, they targeted the support piece Bridge from Below, which didn't really do anything to slow down the Hogaak deck. In fact, after Bridge was banned in July of 2019, in August of 2019, there were 3 Grand Prix, and Hogaak took up 13 of the 24 possible top 8 slots. Of course, a couple of months later, after ruining a bunch more Modern events, including the biggest event of the year in GP Vegas, Wizards finally did what everyone knew needed to be done and banned Hogaak itself. It'll be interesting to see how Wizards handles the inevitable Nadu banning. I've seen people tossing out some idiotic suggestions like ban Court of Calling, and some less unreasonable but still wrong-headed ideas like banning Shuko. Banning Shuko is the equivalent of banning Bridge from Below to stop Hogaak. It's a half measure that is unlikely to actually work. The only banning that'll really fix the problem is banning the bird itself. The release of Modern Horizons sets only happens every couple of years, and the few months after a Modern Horizons set releases is the time when Modern is most relevant and most played, or at least it should be, assuming there isn't a Hogaak or a Nadu running around to ruin everything. If Wizards had any guts, they'd simply ban Nadu tomorrow and call it a day, but this seems unlikely. Instead, we'll probably suffer through a couple of months of people saying play more removal, or give the metagame time to adjust, or one deck metas are actually great because they're skill testing, and other such nonsense. The next scheduled ban list update isn't until the end of August, nearly 2 months in the future. Do we really want the release of a super fun and interesting Modern Horizons 3 to be overshadowed by a card that literally everyone in the community called out was a mistake as soon as it was spoiled? I know that I don't, but it could be even worse. It seems very possible that after Nadu dominates for 2 more months, Wizards finally announces their August ban list update and takes a half measure like banning Shuko, just like they banned Bridge from Below in an absurdly misguided attempt to stop Hogaak, which could risk the health and fun of Modern for an even longer period of time, assuming they'll then have to ban Nadu on the next ban list update in October or November, leaving Modern in this untenable position for many months. It's been said that if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Will Wizards learn from Hogaak and take swift action against Nadu itself, or will they repeat their past mistakes of inaction and half measures? I hope it's the former, but knowing Wizards, I'm super afraid it's the latter. Now it's up to Wizards to do the right thing and save Modern from a card that everyone knew was a design mistake, and that we now have data to back this up. If Wizards is gonna take the risk and print cards like Nadu, they also need to have the guts to ban those cards quickly if they end up being problematic, not in a few months, not after taking half measures like banning Shuko, but as soon as humanly possible. I said that Nadu was the Hogaak of Modern Horizons 3, but I was wrong. It's way better. I just hope that Wizards realizes this too. Need a Nadu? Well, you can snag one from our sponsor, Card Kingdom, over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish. And if you're looking for even more magic, check out the video where I talk about the plays that actually change the rules of the game, or maybe the against odds where we taught some arena zoomers about Emrakul and Chalice of the Void.